Hello, it's Yeesha Stone with another how-to tutorial. Today we're going to be making this Mimikyu here. So if this is kind of what you're looking for, then this is the right video for you. The colors you're going to need are a black, a brown, a red, and kind of like a off yellow. If you have like a light yellow, you can mix it with some light tan and maybe some white to kind of get the muddled yellow that Mimikyu is. Let's get started. Alright, first here we're going to grab our yellow, and we're going to set these up here, and we're going to roll it into a cone shape. Now, how we do that is, I like to first start with a circle, so roll the ball into a circular motion. You can do that between your hands, or you can do that on the table. And then, you take one side of it, and roll back and forth, just a little bit. Just back and forth, till you get kind of like a cone shape. If it gets too pointy for you, you can always just kind of push it back in. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom of our cone here, and we're going to pinch it just very, very lightly. Now when you're pinching, you don't want to pinch with the tips of your fingers. If you do that, it's going to look kind of weird. Instead, we're more like pulling it into the shape that we want. We're just going to lightly pull it out. So we get kind of this frill here along the bottom. Alright, next, I'm going to take a tool here. Now you can use a toothpick, a mechanical pencil, whatever works for you. And I'm going to make just a couple of indents in this frill we just made. Now the number of them, the distance between them, I like to make them so that they're varied sizes, but you can do whatever you want. There's no particular on that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these segments that I cut out, and I'm just going to pull it out. Now when I'm pinching this time, I am actually kind of using the tips of my fingers just because I can't get quite into that area without doing that. But I'm not really pinching hard, I'm more pulling. Now if you're having a really hard time getting into that area, you can always kind of just pull it apart and then pinch it out. You're going to do that to all of our little segments here that we made. So it looks something like that. Next, we're going to take our black, and we're going to make a bunch of small thin cones. So we're just going to take our clay, and we're going to roll it into a snake, just back and forth with your finger. And we're going to take one side, and we're going to make it slightly pointy. Now, this is too long. You're going to want to do it just very little, so that it's about that big, or that long, so it's very short. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to squish it flat. Make sure it stays pointed. And then I'm going to place it in between one of those two segments I just made. We're going to do that for all of them. So keep in mind when you're making your segments that you're going to be making one of these for each of them. So don't make a whole ton. Unless you really want to, then go for it. Just rolling and squishing. I'm doing it all kind of in the same motion. Just rolling between my fingers, putting more pressure on one side than the other, then I'm squishing it flat, and then I'm kind of making it pointy again, and then pressing it down. There we go. So it looks kind of like that from the top. Now you kind of play with these and make them pointy if they've gone more rounded, or if you like the rounded look, then you can do that too. Alright, next, I'm going to grab our yellow again. I'm going to set these over here, and I'm going to roll it into you're going to get quite a bit more than you think you need. That might be a little too much. Into a circle again. Oops, come back. By doing it in a circular motion. You can do it on the table or in your hands. Now, I'm going to roll just very, very slightly on either side of my circle here, so it turns more into this weird squat oval. And then I'm just going to kind of round those edges back out so it looks like that, like a really round triangle, or as the anime likes to say, a donut. Alright, next I'm going to make this slightly pointed here. I'm just making sure these are the right size, and I think they are. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to do the ears real quick, because this is going to be the head. I'm going to take my yellow and roll it into two small circles. Now I like to start most of my shapes as circles because it's easy to tell, oh, this one's bigger than this one, or this one's bigger than this one, when they're the same shape, and circles are just the easiest shape to make. Then I'm going to get my black. There we go. Sorry. Then I'm going to get my black. I'm going to get less of it than I have of the yellow. Roll it into 2 small circles as well. Then I'm going to stick them on the end of my circles, and I'm going to roll this into a cone, just like we did for the body. So rolling more on this side than this side. I'm using my fingers here because they come to this natural cone shape here, so it's easier to make that. But again, you can just roll on the table or whatever works for you. Now, if this were Pikachu, I'd say keep this shape. But since this is Mimikyu, its ears are kind of flat and bent. So what we do is we're going to squish this very, very slightly. So just give it a little tiny pinch. And then I'm going to bend it drastically. Just kind of like that. Then I'm going to attach that on the side of his head. So I'm going to place it on, and then I'm just going to lightly smush the clay into itself. It's hard for me to get my fingers back here on the back of the head, so I'm just going to use the tool to do the same ideas. I'm just taking the clay up here and pressing it down into it. Then we're going to do the same for this one. We're going to roll it, and we're going to squish it slightly flat. There we go. And I'm going to kind of do another funky shape with this one. There we go. Then I'm going to roll that in. Kind of just make it so it looks like it's part of the same shape. Something like that. All right. Next, I'm going to get this tool right here. Now, out of all the tools I would say to buy, I'd say this one is my number one. If you're going to buy a tool and not use a toothpick or a mechanical pencil or whatnot, it would be this one, this little ball on the end, because it's great for making eyes and things. But I've used the tip of a mechanical pencil before, and I've used a normal pencil, probably actually works better than mechanical, and those can work. But basically what you're going to do is I'm just going to roll this to make an indent for me to put the eyes in. That way, when I attach the eyes, or when I actually put the clay in for the eyes, they're not floating really high above it. They're actually in it. All right, next I'm going to get my black, and I'm going to start with 2 small circles. Then I'm going to roll them into really small snakes, so just back and forth between my fingers there. And I'm going to place those in those holes I made. Just kind of pushing them around until I get the shape I'm looking for. Now, since these are the eyes, I'm going to add some little shinies to them just to make them pop a little bit more, but shinies are totally optional. So I'm going to get my clay, get 2 really thin, really small snakes, and I'm going to put them on the side of the eyes. So it looks like that now. This is like a translucent or a transparent, so it's going to turn slightly opaque, or yeah, slightly invisible when I cook it, so it's not quite as bold. All right, next, I'm going to make the cheeks. So since they're drawn on for the Pokemon, it's a little bit hard to make them look perfect out of clay, but we're going to try our best. So we're going to get a little bit of red, and remember, if you're working with red clay, it does kind of stain your fingers a little bit, so that's why we try to save it till near the very end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this into a snake and place it over the area that I know I want the cheek to be. So there, and there. And then I'm going to take my tool here, again you can use a toothpick or whatever, and I'm going to just go back and forth, so it kind of gets all squiggly. I'm just going to play with that a little bit, so it looks kind of like that. Back and forth, back and forth. You can do more or less, whatever looks good to you. So it looks something like that. I'm going to kind of smooth it out by just rubbing my fingers over it. Now I'm going to add the mouth. And I'm just going to indent here. Just make some straight lines, some zigzags. And if you want to make it more prominent, you can put some black clay in them, but I don't think it's needed. And you want the zigzags to kind of go into the cheeks. So it looks kind of like that. And again, it's almost better the less straight you do, because it's supposed to be like scribbled on. Now for the eyes, there's two ways to do it. The more correct way would be to do the similar thing that we did for the cheeks, only rather than going back, forth, you kind of go in a circular motion. But personally, I think when it's made out of clay, at least, the eyes look much better if they're buttons. So that's what I'm going to do, because I think it looks cuter. Alright, now I'm going to get some black, make 2 small balls about the same size. Now I'm going to squish them very slightly, and then place them on where I want the eyes to be. So it looks something like that. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly even. You can do whatever you want since it's a costume. Then I'm going to get my tool here, and I'm going to poke 4 holes into both black dots. And then I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to make a cross over them as if there was a thread that was running from one to another. Sometimes the holes kind of disappear when you do this, so you can just make them again like that. Alright, next we're going to place this on. I'm just going to kind of wiggle it into place and then take the clay from the head and kind of mesh it together more. And if you're worried about this joint being too weak, you can always put like a wire between them. That's something I would consider if it was bigger, because the head is a little bit haphazard, but it's kind of supposed to be at the same time, so it's up to whatever you want to do. There we go. And then because it's a Mimikyu, I don't like having my heads, or my costume heads, on perfectly straight. I like to kind of just tilt them a little bit. So it looks like that. And last but not least, we're going to take our brown. Now I kind of have a marbled brown here because I like that better. It looks more like wood, so I took 3 different colors of brown and I mixed them together just slightly so that you can see all 3 colors still. I think it looks a bit more like wood and looks nicer overall, but you can do a solid color too. Alright, I'm jumping ahead. Next, I'm going to roll it into a cone. There's a lot of cone shapes in this guy, so same idea as the body here, rolling just on one side. Then I'm going to squish it slightly flat. And then I'm going to put that down. I'm going to hold this here and kind of just make a sharp bend there. And then pinch it. I'm not really pinching. I'm more using the shape between my fingers here to match it. I'm going to do the same down here. And if you want it to be a little bit more of a harsh bend, you can put your tool there in that inside corner. And then, since it's wood again, I like to add just a little bit of a grain-like texture to it. And since I kind of imagine this part here to be some end grain, I just kind of poke it rather than making the stripes. Alright, and then we just stick that on the back there. So it looks something like that. And that is our Mimikyu. But you know what? I think we could take this one step farther. And there is our Mimikyu. I think he turned out pretty good. I'd like to give the thanks to my Patreons. They help to support me and the viewers like you. So, thank you. We'll see you next time.